Clinical Design Group. Thank you so much to everyone who has made time to be here. I really appreciate it. So we might just get started. Just before we start though, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we're all gathered today. Here in Brisbane, it's the Yagara and Turrbal people, and we pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, acknowledging the First Peoples as the first scientists, educators and healers. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be recording the Clinical Design Group and we will make it available. So please, if you don't wish to be on camera, turn off your camera, please. So today there'll be a really quick Sparked update, an AUCDI update, and then we kind of really delve into the AUCDI R3 data discussion. We'll be looking at backlog items, the health assessment data group, and the child developmental information, and then we will wrap up with the next steps. So a Flashfire Sparked update. I'm going to see if I can introduce more puns every meeting. I just wanted to give the group a really quick update on what's kind of happening in the TDG space. So in the TDG space, all 3 specs are currently in ballot and they're going through the ballot reconciliation process. So AU Core R2 is their ballot for working standard. It is in the reconciliation phase, and you can just see the information here. They've raised there are a few jury issues, but that's normal, and they're working through those now. AUE requesting is also out for ballot. It did not receive enough votes to approve as yet, but as we work through the issues, we hope that we can get there, because we are working through the issues that have been raised, and the TDG is working to resolve a lot of those, so then those negative ones can be withdrawn. The last one that's out for ballot is the patient summary, and that's at ballot for comment. So that's been a really good release. It's been because it's only for comment, it's not for approval, it's only for comment, but there has been 34 jury issues raised and they are working through those now. And if you guys want more information, really feel free to join the TDGs. They're discussing these at the moment over the next couple of weeks. The other thing to raise was 2 weeks ago we held a Spark testing connectathon. Well, sorry, there was a HL7 AU connectathon in which there was a few tracks for Spark, so AU Core, AU Patient Summary, and E-Requesting. It was a really successful event. There was 17 organisations in the room with over 90 in-person attendees, and this diagram here is just to kind of really show the amount of interconnectedness is happening. There is data changing, being exchanged, there are connections being formed. So it's been really cool to see that the standards that have been developed within Sparked are really starting to kind of make their way into the vendor land. So the stuff that we're doing in AUCDI, which is then taken and translated into AU Core, AU Requesting, and AU Patient Summary, there are technical solutions that are starting to be built and exchanged now. So it's just really nice to see. These slides will obviously be made available on the website, but this is a quick summary of all the things that each of the groups were doing on the day. So it was really cool to see that, and the presentations at the end were really cool. There was a really cool one, I think, from Scriptly, which I think everyone was really impressed by, but everyone who attended and participated, it was actually really cool to see. Just another quick reminder, if you missed the Spark Symposium in May, it was an all-day online event. The videos are all on our website, so if you're interested or have friends who are interested, please feel free to share it. You can get there from our website or the QR code on this page. And also the season 2 of the Spark podcast came out a couple of months ago. So really interesting season, some new guests. There's some big names there like Graham, international names. Some of our community are on there as well. So feel free to check it out, but you can find it on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. So that's fair. Do I sound like her?
You do.
So that's a quick fire, a lightning flash fire Sparked update. So the next sort of recap that I have is just on AUCDI R3. Just a quick reminder, we are on release 3 of the Australian Clinical Data for Interoperability, and that is really specifying what the clinical information is that should be shared, including the data entry, data use, and sharing of any information to support patient care, and that's what we're doing here in the clinical design group. And complementary to that is the AU core, which is being done by the technical design group, and that's specifying how. So thinking about it, how do we technically exchange it? So how should the data be structured, accessed, and shared between the systems? So we're here on release 3, and we've been working on chronic condition management, so really focusing around that assessment, scales and scores. But we will also be looking at encounter record, or have done and will continue to, and then also look at those priority backlog items that we had discussed in our last face-to-face, and we had started the data, looking at the data in the last meeting. So in that last meeting, we did really agree on the blood pressure data group update, the update to the pulse data group, as well as the adverse reaction risk summary data group. So we haven't put the notes up or the minutes up yet, but they will be going up really, really shortly, hopefully today, if not tomorrow. But they will be there soon. I did also want to retouch on the face-to-face workshops, because now that we're looking at the last meeting, I kind of gave a quick update around what were the outputs of the last face-to-face workshop, where we were looking at the AUCDI R3 scope. And during that workshop, we asked the group, what are the focus or priority areas that we should focus on next? What do we need to include within AUCDI R3 as a next step, knowing that we will go to R4 and further? And out of that workshop, we did note that there was a whole range of things that came out. There was women's health, aged care, mental health, social determinants of health, pediatrics. There was a whole bunch around functional assessment and mobility, lifestyle risk factors, cognitive assessments, First Nation health assessments. And so looking back at that data, it was really hard to kind of condense it down because there was such a wide variety. But what did come through really clearly was that there was this strong support for the cradle to grave approach, really recognizing that the data that we're collecting needs to kind of continue on, and it's not just pediatric alone or aged care alone or disability alone. It kind of needed to flow. So taking those results that came out of July, thinking about all of those wide focus areas and thinking about that cradle to grave approach, we did note that aged care and child health were repeated call outs within that July workshop. So I've kind of taken the July workshop results, thought about what we're kind of looking at in terms of the CDG priority, and knowing that we are doing this in an iterative approach. So it is only step 1. We aren't, or step 3 in the process, knowing that there are further steps. So what I would like to kind of do for AUCDI R3 is kind of pick a little bit of each. So for the health assessment, we did agree that we would pick a data group to support that recording of the health assessment name and its completion date. We also wanted to, so I was also looking to include something around functional status or functional assessment. So include a data group to support that, but then also take a data group to support the child developmental information. So try and start that journey now. So what that would look like for AUCDI R3 is AUCDI R3 will be all of the content from AUCDI. It will be that health assessment data group. It will be a data group around that assessment of function, one for child development, all of the priority backlog items that were identified by the clinical design group that we are in the middle of working through now. And potentially, depending on what we look at when we look at encounter record, depending on the scope that comes out of it. So we'll be looking to look at encounter record in further detail because we've started it already in the past face-to-faces, but kind of take that and then start thinking about what a first step, what a MVP would look like for encounter record. And if there's any additional items that need to be included for that, we'll consider whether that needs to go into AUCDI R3. So that's kind of the current thinking. And I was just wondering if anyone had any questions or concerns or any thoughts around the scope there. So I got a thumbs up. There's no other questions or comments. I'm happy to continue, but knowing that, things can change if we need to add other things or things change or do other things or focus on other things. We're also, very hopefully quite agile and flexible around those things. But this is kind of the direction that we're heading in at the moment. So what that means in terms of the plan is the plan. In this meeting, we'll look at that health assessment data group. We'll complete all the rest of the backlog items that we didn't get to at the last meeting and look at a developmental milestone summary. That means everything else. So data to support that functional assessment, what we need for encounter record information, and the couple of backlog items that we flagged that we need to do a little bit more kind of research or understanding in terms of what's happening outside of Spark, particularly around the About Me, what's going on in the consumer space, what's happening in the agency and the department. We just need to do a little bit more landscape understanding. So we'll address those ones in the upcoming meeting. So currently we're kind of in that discovery phase or figuring it out. Which then takes it into the data discussion. So start working through those things. So just before I hand over to Nai to take us through the actual data groups that we're proposing or the updates for the data groups that we're proposing for R3, just wanted to kind of recap quickly where we were looking at what we had proposed in the last face-to-face. And I think we mentioned it in the last meeting as well, that for AUCDI R3 in terms of health assessments, what we'll be looking at is a data group to capture the health assessment name and its completion state. So that one on the left. Obviously, we're also looking at those reusable data groups, and that's where we start to think about the functional assessments and the child development information, where we're looking at data groups for actually modelling out the assessment tools specifically. That's in the backlog and won't be included in R3, but we obviously have used and will continue to use that to kind of drive the scope for those reusable data groups that we want to add into R3. So I might pass to Nai now. Oh, you're on mute still.
Thanks, Kylene. Did you want me to share my screen?
I'm happy to keep going if you like.
Okay, cool. So hi, everybody. As Kylene said, we're going to go through health assessment data collection and reuse, as you can see on the screen. The big orange square in the middle is what we're talking about in shaping up the data group. And we're hoping to get that really broad spectrum perspective of the health assessment so that we can then start mapping out how we're going to plan and let it grow over time. So we really want to get your heads into thinking, how do we use the data that we need for health assessments, for clinical documentation, for population health, or to populate tools, or in clinical decision support. So thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so on the screen, we've got our health assessment at the top. The information that's underneath describes the concept. So it's a provision of a health assessment required to evaluate an individual's physical, mental, developmental, or functional health status for the purpose of prevention, screening, diagnosis, or care planning. And the purpose is to record details about the provision of a health assessment at a clinically relevant event in the intervention life cycle, from planning to completion, and including all deviations and interruptions. So the representation would be, we record one instance per care flow for each procedure recorded in a health record. And if you just click, Kylene, we'll see on the screen the roadmap. So the the clinical concept health assessment is highlighted by that pink square in the middle for those who haven't attended a CTG before. And the data elements are represented by the white background, the black name, and then the orange circle with the white star are the candidates for R3. So next slide, please. So as you can see, what we're going to do now is then go through into a Menti, the same as what we did at the last CTG. And we'd like everybody to just have a really slow read through of the content that's on the screen. You can see that the pink relates to the clinical concept above, which I just read out, and the white square on the top right-hand corner relates to the data elements and the descriptors that we wanted to include or propose to the clinical design group about those particular data elements. So the assessment name, as Kylene suggested before, is the name of the assessment or the type of assessment. The description is that narrative description about the provision of health assessment applicable to the care flow step, and the date of the assessment means that that's part of that care flow step at the bottom, which means the assessment has been provided. So it's an active care flow step or in the process. And I think we've got a question from Oliver.
Yeah, thank you. It looks all pretty reasonable. The only question I've got in the white box on the right, description, I don't really understand what it's saying. Narrative description about the provision of the health assessment. So I'm not quite sure what that means. Applicable to the care flow step. It doesn't tell me anything. So can you explain that?
I guess that's a free text, and it's an optional data element at the moment. So you could put in additional details about the health assessment that was conducted, and the presentation of the patient if you needed to put in additional information.
I'm not sure that tells me a lot more. I mean, I wondered when you've got date of assessment.
Yep.
Some of these assessments might be done on more than one date. So I had half expected you were going to say the date the assessment was started and the date it was completed, which they might not be the same date. And I don't know if that actually matters or not, whether anybody else cares. Perhaps we only need to know the date an assessment was completed. But yeah, the description part, I'm still a bit baffled about. And I can see Adrian, not many GPs at this meeting at the moment. It's only Adrian and me, I think. But I'd be interested to know whether Adrian can make more sense of it.
So is there a suggestion about how we should improve it, or should we take that off and have a discussion? Is it just that it's not clear?
Well, I wonder if description was meant to say, you have the thing that says over 75 plus health assessment or whatever, and the description is some kind of explanation of what the purpose of it is. That's what I kind of expected to be there, but I'm not sure that that's what that text is about.
Okay, all right. I think Heather's got her hand up and Adrian have both got their hands raised.
I think Adrian first.
First, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll just turn on my mic's on. Yep. So to me, the health assessment, well, this whole thing doesn't really provide much information, because out of a health assessment, you'll usually get some outcomes that will be useful to other clinicians that are utilising the health assessment. And they're often quite complex, so it's not just a simple number. For example, like if you do even something simple like a K10 or a DAS21 score, it's not just a simple answer like the score is 15 or something like that, which gives you a broad range, but there's a lot of detail that sits underneath, which if you need to know about if you're using it as an outcome measure. So you can get that sort of very basic description, but there needs to be more detail within the assessment name. And I agree with Oliver that often in these health assessments, it's not just one person who does it. It might be a team that go through the health assessment. So that might be done over a period of time, and it might not be complete for quite some time. And there might be different stages of the health assessment. So it's quite a lot more complex than just an assessment name, description, and date of assessment.
Okay.
Heather, did you want to answer that, or Oliver's, or another different point? Oh, you're on mute, Heather.
I am too. I wanted to respond to both. Can we go back to the previous slide, please? So, in fact, there's an error on the screen. In the pink one on the left is actually our proposal. The one on the right in the blue is the roadmap. And the proposal is a cut-down version of the roadmap. And this roadmap is also a common pattern that we've been using and published in previous, or in release 2, we started to do this, where we're developing a generic model to try and track progress of particular tasks. So we've done it with medical equipment supply, we've done it with health education, we've done it with procedures. This is the same pattern. And so what this is doing is not recording the details of the assessment. That would be done using a different data group. So your K9, K10, whatever they're called, various other things like the full aged care assessment, whatever it might be that you want to do, they would be recorded using other data groups or a combination of data groups if necessary to capture the details. The pure process or the pure purpose of this model is to track progress of something being done. So you can see that there's a care flow step group at the bottom of that blue roadmap, and that's basically identifying various events that you want to record particular data against. So it might be that you want to plan the assessment or postpone it because something happens and you know that it's in progress, but we haven't got it to the active phase. It might need to be cancelled. You might have a scheduled date you want to add in, or it's provided. And in fact, it might be provided on multiple occasions, in which case at the end of all service provisions or the assessment provisions, you then say it can be completed. So that's the last one in that care flow step. So this is to support us tracking an assessment being done from planning all the way through to completion. And that's what the purpose is trying to tell you. It's about tracking the details. And so the assessment name and the description of what you're doing at that phase is really relevant to the care flow step. So the assessment name should be the same all the way through, but it might actually change. In the case of procedure, you might plan a particular operation, but you actually end up providing a different based on when the patient goes under anesthesia or something like that. So it helps deviations from what the plan was so that you can actually audit this. So it's quite a complex model, but it's elegant, but it's not got the typical details you'll see like a blood pressure or a pulse or a diagnosis. This is kind of a process related one, but at the bare bones, we're suggesting we need to record the name of the assessment, a description about it, particularly relevant to that care flow step, because it might change through time. There might be you need to put in there related to why it was suspended or why it was abandoned, things like this. So it's enabling the tracking, not the actual data for each assessment. So an Edinburgh postnatal depression score would be recorded using a data group that's specific for that purpose. But we can say it's planned. We can say we tried to do it, but we had to postpone it, and we've actually rescheduled it, and then actually that it's been done, and that we can actually file it away from our list of things to do to say it's been completed. So this is the notion of this kind of pattern of our data groups. So it's not, when you're saying there's a whole lot of stuff missing, I understand what you're saying. It needs to be recorded elsewhere, and that needs to be done in conjunction. So we're gradually building up this ecosystem of models. But this is to help us be using this kind of thing in a care plan environment to say, these are all the things we need to do. These are the assessments. These are the referrals, will be the service request. We'll have a similar kind of pattern. It helps us to track all of these things that are moving targets and tracking that we are actually progressing them, nothing's falling through the cracks. So it's got a particular purpose that's a little bit different to some of the other things. But this is absolutely consistent with some of the existing models that we're trying to track health education. We're trying to track procedures that have planned through to being done. Supply of medical equipment, things like that are already in release 1 and 2.
I think it was also raised in previous meetings, just knowing that the assessments have been done is already a really important piece of information that the clinician can follow up to say, well, I know that 5 what's have been done over the last, is this a flag? So I think Jane has posted in the comments, if the purpose is to know a health assessment was done and when, is it useful to know who did the assessment for follow-up separately? And I think that provenance part, Heather, you were about to say something, I cut you off.
No. I mean, all of that kind of thing, like who is the patient, where it was done, who did it, that is part of the background of all of these data groups. So we have said in our scope for AUCDI, we don't specify it in each model. Assume that is there because every bit of data needs all of these kind of background technical artifacts to be able to help us to record this appropriately in a health record. So that is there. It's just not revealed in this. This is the clinically specific stuff around a health assessment that's telling us that the tracking and progression. And I think the scope in this particular data group has been reduced down to just that it was about the assessment being provided and the date on which it was being provided, purely because that was given the main use case for this. Eventually, we would like to reveal more care flow steps and make all of this available so we can be actively tracking all of these kinds of phases of activity through this health assessment, going from plan through to completed. But that will be future releases, and that will be the same. It's the same kind of pattern with all of these intervention-related data groups. We're starting really simple about saying something was done, and we know that we can gradually work through to a full care plan that will be telling us that what state every single activity might be in. We know what things are scheduled, what things are behind, what things have been missed, what things got cancelled, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but as a first step, it is really supporting that use case of being able to just know that it's been done, and you can follow up to find out the information if you need it, or knowing that 5 of these particular assessments have been done and this one as well. So I think it's just a first step kind of along the way, and knowing that we can expand the model out to fit more use cases.
We've also made it deliberately as universally applicable to all health assessments as possible, just to support this kind of broad work. And we don't know quite where it's going to end up and how complex it will be, but it will be very useful, have universal utility for all sorts of use cases.
Yes. And also, oh, Adrian, I was just about to say your note around clinical indication, why the assessment was done. And I think sometimes it's not a clinic. Is it always a clinical indication? Could there be other reasons for assessment that may not be clinical? Maybe it's like a annual check or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So I think it's really, if you're looking at this de novo, if you just got this, they had the assessment done and you don't know why it's been done or who it's been done by, the information is not particularly useful. So I think you need those 2 things in there. So who did it and why it was done. It's not as compulsory fields, because not every time you're going to have that. But if it is there, then it's useful information. Otherwise, you've just got, oh, this assessment was done, but well, why and who by. So I think you need those fields there as well, the description and who it was done by.
Adrian,
would you say?
Right, is absolutely there. It's just not, I mean, it's the same for every data group. So you can assume that it's there. That has to be mandatory. Totally agree. As is who the patient was. All of those kinds of things are mandatory for any data. So that's the thing. The clinical indication, I mean, remember, there's also going to be a request potentially that might say this is why we're doing it, which has a clinical indication. But this allows us just to record that something was done, even just de novo. If we want to, we can reveal that. It's a level of detail of is it in this release or is it in a future release? And that's, I guess, up for discussion at the moment, whether we should be allowing that clinical indication to be expressed in this particular publication in R3, or whether we hold it for the next one. It's part of the plan. It's a question.
I think you need to have it now, otherwise it's pretty useless information. And it can be optional. I mean, there will be health assessments that I don't think make them compulsory field, but it should be there as an optional field. And as we have with many other things, where you can include the clinical indication if necessary, because often you'll do the assessment for a reason. It's important that the next clinician knows why you've done that assessment.
Was there any other comments from anyone else? So in terms of, I think, taking your comment on board, Adrian, about, I think maybe for this for R3, I keep wanting to say R1, for R3 of this health assessment, maybe we come back with a model with the clinical indication. So maybe we won't take a vote on it today, but we'll bring it back with a revised. What do you think, Heather or Nye?
Or we can we can, I guess, take the Menti and adapt it.
Yeah. Okay, well, if people are okay, maybe we might do a vote. So looking at this health assessment map here, model here, assuming it's assessment name, description, and clinical indication as the data, and then including a date of assessment, can we do a quick Menti just to see where we're at? If we need more time to look at it, we can, but I think as is, would people be comfortable with that? Now let me just find the QR code thingy. Don't want to play today. So if you can just go to menti.com 54658597 or scan the QR code. So assuming that health assessment includes clinical indication, so it has the name, the description, the clinical indication, whether or not we're happy for it to be included as that for AUCDIR3, knowing that in the future we can expand it as per the roadmap or additional things if we are so inclined, but also knowing that in the future we want to think about how do we exchange those actual score assessment tool information, and that kind of would be probably on a case-by-case basis, looking at the actual tools specifically.
Colleen, can
For
I just
those-
ask clarification? The just approval as it is that the proposal we've got on the screen, and our proposal with minor changes, is that with the clinical indication, or have I got that wrong?
I was saying that if the approval with no changes is including clinical indication, with minor changes is some other changes not including that one. So if you have put in minor, and if you don't mind popping in the notes or putting your hand up and letting us know what those minor changes might be, so we can have an idea to make sure that we consider everything, that would be really appreciated. But yeah, we don't have so many people on the call today, so I think we might be done on this one. Is there anyone still voting? I'll move on in. Okay, Adrian, so yours is to add clinical indication. So okay, thank you.
+1.
Yeah, +1. And if there's any other people, any others, just let me know. Or feel free to email us as well if you don't want to put it in the chat. All right, so we might move on now.
Okay, thank you. So what we're going to go through now is just a recap of what happened in Sydney for those who attended the CDG in Sydney. There was a backlog pitching event, and then in our August online meeting, we actually proposed updates to 3 of the data groups that you can see on the screen. So blood pressure, heart rhythm, and adverse risk reaction summary. And we added some important details into the model. So for blood pressure, it was body position. For heart rhythm, it was the heart rhythm value set, which was around regular and irregular. And for adverse risk reaction summary, we added quite a few. You can see them on the screen. So verification status, criticality, date and time of onset of last reaction, specific substance, the onset of reaction, which is the time of the reaction started, initial exposure, and clinical management description. So what we're going to go through now is just a continuation of that backlog process that we went through in the August meeting. However, we've got a couple more data groups that we'd like to propose to the CDG. And today we're going to look at head circumference in particular to support the measurements around the head, vaping summary, which has a requirement of the overall status that was pitched in Sydney, and implanted device summary. So we're going to have a look at the model that was already part of the AUE request DI, and then look at how we can augment those. The next slide, please. Okay, so the first one we are looking at today is a head circumference, and the requirements around the head circumference were to include head circumference value in centimetres and the date of measurement. So again, on this slide, you can see we've got the concept description being the measurement of the longest distance around the head, and the purpose is to obviously record the longest distance around the head. So the representation would be to record 1 instance per observation event within a health record. And at the top on the right, we've got the description. Sorry, just might need to move that little cursor, Kylene. Yep. So the data elements that appear with the white background and the orange circle with the white star. So you've got head circumference and comment. So the head circumference is the measurement of the longest distance around the head. The comment is the additional narrative about the measurement of the longest distance around the head. So that's where you might put in additional information that you might need to add about that measurement. And then we've got the date and time of measurement. And importantly, on this particular model, this has 2 events. We've got the any point in time event, which allows you to record the measurement over and over if you need to do it at a future points in time. But also we can record that first measurement at birth of the head circumference. And we know that that's important so that we can accurately record the growth over time, any nutritional information that we might need to record in the health record about the head circumference, and early identification of abnormalities and syndromes in infants. The next slide, please. So you can see on the screen, this is the roadmap. So the proposal is in the pink, and my apologies for the typo in the last slide, but the head circumference roadmap is in blue. And we've got a couple of other attributes there in the middle that are part of the future candidates. We've got the state, so any confounding factors that we might need to record about how the measurement was done or the state of the patient if they were not happy to have their head measured, or there might be something that interrupts that, and the protocol, so the device that was used. So I think Kylene Kim's just posted a question in the chat.
Yeah. Head circumference in utero, is this recorded in another data group?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Heather says yes, and that's so good. Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Heather.
So
Was
can
there
we?
any
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah. Are there any other questions about this data group before we go through to the proposal? So I guess what this one's doing is starting to form the basis of those measurements and observations that we record as clinicians to sort of go towards that child health record. But also we can use it in any other instance if we needed to. So when we're measuring the longest distance around the head. So this on the screen, we've got back to our proposal. So we've got the orange text in the orange box outlines the clinical concept and the descriptions that we're proposing for the clinical concept for the data group. And in the white box, we've got the data elements and the descriptions that I've already read through previously. So we might go, if there's no questions, Kylene?
Might go to if we can again vote, please. If you agree with the model as it was, if there's any minor changes, please let us know. If you disagree, also let us know. And if you abstain, you can let us know if you like. Oh, I'll put the QR code. I think some people join a bit later. But yeah, menti.com 54658597.
5, 7.
How many do we have in the last one? 11, 12?
I think about 12, yeah.
Okay. I'll just give it another 10 seconds and then we'll move on. 10, 9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Moving on. Back to you, Nai.
Okay, thanks, Kylene. Okay, so the next one is vaping summary, and this is for a new data group. Again, we've got the clinical concept descriptions outlined at the top above the model. So this would be a vaping summary data group, which has been modelled off in similar to like the tobacco smoking summary or the substance use summary for those who had previously been involved in looking at the models and how we brought them together. So in particular, this one's had quite a lot of discussion around it. But the requirement we had for vaping summary that came through in the backlog pictures was to be able to record the overall status. And that is the top data element that we've got on the model there. So the vaping summary is a summary of persistent information about the vaping habits of an individual. So what we're trying to do is record the habits of that individual, to record the summary information about the pattern of vaping or substances of e-liquids, And we want to have the representation record only one instance of this data group per substance in the health record. So any changes or updates over time are captured as revisions to the original entry rather than creating a new entry. And if you just click the slide, on the left, we've got the proposed data group, which you can see we've included the overall status, but then we've also added in an overall description, which is similar to the tobacco smoking summary data group, and an overall comment. And these data elements give the clinicians additional fields to be able to pop in additional information about the vaping patterns of that particular, the vaping habits of that individual. We've also got the last updated, so we can actually get that, that date incrementally over time if we need to. And on the right-hand side, you've got the vaping summary roadmap. So there's a lot more information that we need to be able to capture about the patterns of vaping for an individual that we haven't got in this particular vaping summary. Now, remembering that what we're doing is just being able to record the minimal amount of information at this point to be able to support that information exchange. But we do see that this particular data group will grow over time. And underneath the overall description on the right-hand side, you can see that there's some grayed out data elements. So we've got regular vaping commenced. We've got daily vaping commenced, and then in the middle, per substance, we've got that nested within this vaping summary. We've got another detailed group of data elements that would be able to give us a little bit more information. And then underneath we have some overall details. So we've got a slot for that and an overall quit date. So we can record on the right-hand side, we can record the substance name. So if it was peppermint flavoured, the status that they're currently, if they're currently vaping, a description about it, and then we can actually get even more detailed, and you can see that this particular model branches out to start collecting data about the episodic pattern of that particular vaping habit of that individual. So maybe before we move to the next slide, does anyone have any comments or would like to raise some questions around this vaping summary? Yes, Adrian, you're very correct. Yes, sorry, Adrian.
My mic on. So just with vaping just describes the method of basically the method of use. It doesn't describe what substances are being used, and often what's more. I mean, both are important, but the substances that are being vaped are really important. So nicotine is a typical one, but you can get cannabis vaping. There's a whole lot of other things that you can vape, and they have, depending on what the substance is really determines what sort of treatment and what sort of intervention you'll take depending on the substance.
Yes. Yep.
So should substance be part of this? That's my question.
Oh, sorry. Did you want substance to be part of the proposal?
Obviously there could be multiple substances, but that would make it more complicated. But
I think what was originally proposed was the overall status only, just because I think with vaping right now, we don't really know what people are vaping. There's a lot of it's not clear what people are vaping and what information we need to collect about vaping. And I think a lot of research does need to be done in this space to really understand what that is. So the original feedback we got was really just at least knowing that they are vaping is a good start. So I think there's also questions about what will be recorded in the overall status of vaping or not vaping. And I think it was along the same lines as tobacco smoking. So like never vaped, current vapor or former vapor, along those lines. So that sort of exact same pattern. I think when we started with tobacco summary and another one, which I can't remember right now, we started off with just a status just to start with, and a last updated date with a description, knowing that we are going to move kind of towards the right-hand side and add additional fields on. But I think we're not sure exactly whether we should include substance now or whether it's a bit later, what the substances should be, what that really looks like in like in the reality of where people are vaping all sorts of things from all sorts of places. So kind of as a first step, this is what we were proposing. I don't know, Heather, if you had any other comments around this.
I think, this is the same pattern that we've been using for all of our substance use, whether it's alcohol, tobacco, and just any kind of substance. Vaping is slightly different in that it is substance use, but it's a particular method of inhalation that's clearly got clinical significance, so it's got its own model. I think there's confusion around yet how to record that and even to identify the substances themselves. It may well just be, Acme peppermint flavour for a starting point before we actually start to know what the active substances are. So this is something I think that's in flux. We've responded really to the request for overall status to at least know in a consistent way across our systems that we just know that the person is vaping. But clearly we need to evolve this when we get more and more guidance about, how we should standardise this. We're basing it on these existing patterns for alcohol and tobacco, which have had lots of implementations overseas. We assume it's going to come the same way, but I think there's still some more research, Adrian, to kind of refine this properly. We could, you can see in the roadmap that the substance is in there because we know that needs to be there, but by itself, without other information, it starts to build up to be quite extensive, and we haven't actually got that extensive yet with our tobacco and alcohol smoking to that degree. We're starting with tobacco, but I think we just need to go slow on the vaping perhaps, but building towards this as we get more and more agreement, I guess, clinically at government level. We know that they're doing quite a lot of work there to try and understand the nature of the problem as well. But I think we're all feeling our way a little bit, and at least flagging that we do know that they vape, and then recording what you do know in this description at the moment is probably the starting point.
I'm happy with that.
Thanks.
Totally agree with your clinical requirements, but yeah, it's just being pragmatic at the moment. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So again, this slide is the time when we're about to come into the Menti. So again, we've got the concept description on the left-hand side in the orange box. So that summary of persistent information about the vaping habits of an individual. And then on the right-hand side, we've got the data elements that we're providing additional information about in the data elements. And I think Oliver's got his hand up there. Yes, Oliver.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy with most of it. My only question is, I'm looking at overall comment, thinking what is different to overall description? They seem to be very much saying the same, and I don't quite understand why there are two.
I think the description could give you a bit more of information about the pattern of vaping, and you could put in some information there. But if there was additional information that you wanted to add in, I guess it just gives you the flexibility to use it or not. You don't have to use it. So in an implementation, that might be there, it might not be there, but it gives you the choice, basically, if there's more information needed.
I mean, an overall comment to me would be probably a redundant, optional, unnecessary extra field. And I'd be interested in anybody who's got a strong view that you need to have both, if they're both free text spaces to record information about the vaping.
Heather, did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got a point where you look at it at the moment. If we look at it in context of the roadmap, then it makes more sense. So there is actually, I guess, reason to remove the overall comment at the moment and reveal it later when we've got lots more structured data, that you might want to put something that's completely different to what you'd put in a typical description. But I think you're right in picking it. When you look at description and comment together, they look like there's a lot of overlap at the moment. I think it becomes clearer in the future, and perhaps we could, if you feel better, that we could actually remove it at the moment. I think that's actually valid.
Yeah, and the principle of keeping things simple.
Yeah.
I don't have a strong view, but I just don't see there's a point in the comment one. Yeah.
I think that's a sound comment.
So,
no pun intended.
Shall we propose? So we'll propose this now. Should I propose it Without the comment or
Without comment.
Without comment.
okay, so the proposal is what you see on screen minus comment. So if you vote that, if you think there should not be comment, make no changes. Pick the no changes option if that's not confusing at all. But
So the proposal is for overall status.
overall status, overall
and last
description,
updated.
and last updated. So the proposal is only the three things. Yeah, status, overall description, and last updated. If you do have any other minor changes that you would like, please let us know what those are so we can take that into account. But otherwise, the three things, status, overall description, and last updated.
People have tuned out for this phone.
Yeah. I hope Vicky's voting. I think AHW proposed this one.
Yes, I'm voting.
Good, good.
I'm busy typing back to our drug and alcohol area saying we've got agreement to go ahead. So
Hey, it's good. Bit by bit, I think step by step with this one. All right, if there's no other voting, I will close in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. No, we've only got half an hour left, so.
I know, and we're going to scoot into this one that is a little bit more complicated. So if you just bear with me, we've got a few slides to get through. But if you've got any questions as we go, just raise your hand and we'll be able to stop and talk through them. But I'm going to whiz through these a little bit more quickly. So this one came off the back of a request for the backlog presentation in Sydney about medical devices. And the requirement for the medical devices included the unique device identifier, body site, date of implantation, and date of revision. Now, as you can see on the screen here, we've got a implanted medical device summary, which was published in the AUE Request DI back in October last year. And you can see on the screen, we've got the data group, followed by the data that we're capturing in that data group is device type name, the current status, and an overall comment and last updated. So for example, we might have a cochlear implant, we might have, is it in situ or has the device been withdrawn? So we had those two values that were agreed in the published data group. An overall comment, which gives the freedom to add a little bit more information about that particular implanted device and when it was last updated. But what we don't have is the unique device identifier, the body site where the device is actually located, when it was implanted, and the date of revision or when it was removed. So next slide, please. So as you can see, what we've got on this screen is the roadmap. And we're going to start with the roadmap on this one, not on the proposal, because you can see how it branches right out. And again, I don't have time to go through all of the grayed out data elements, but you can see there's a lot of opportunity to grow this particular model over time. And in particular, what we're looking at is the ones that are the data elements that have the orange background on the left-hand side. They're the ones that are, have already been published and they've got the green circle with the white tick. So they're the ones that I just showed on that previous screen. And then nested within the middle are the candidates that we're going to consider for proposal for this particular CDG. So the data elements in the middle belong to the specific implanted device details. And this is where we would be capturing things like the device name, the status, the insertion date, where it was implanted, and when it was removed or there was a revision. And then, as you can see, we've got a little squiggly line that actually allows us to then capture other data or additional data that we need to about the device itself. And this is where we're going to be able to capture the brand or trade name. If we want to capture more information, I think it's called a GDM. Correct me if I'm wrong. N. Thank you, nomenclature, Kylin. And the UDI, which is the unique device identifier, and we can see that now what we've got is a suite, like a bigger sort of ecosystem of data groups, if you like, that are bringing together the information that we need, but keeping the discrete clinical concepts really quite tightly defined, so that they're collecting the data and nesting it within different slots that make sense and where it's relevant, but also allowing us to be able to capture information about the particular device itself. So in the shaded area, you can see that on the right-hand side. Can you just click to the next? Yep, so we've got an ecosystem of more than one data group. So what we're going to do now is step through the next slide and go through those particular requirements that were proposed in the backlog pictures in Sydney. So again, on the left-hand side, you've got date of implantation, body site, UDI, and date of revision. So if you click through those, we'll start seeing that you can see on the model, the insertion site relates in the blue circled area relates to the date of implantation. The body site is the implant body site. The unique device identifier relates to that UDI, which is on the right-hand side, and the date of revision or the date of review relates to that yellow circle, which is in that middle data group that's nested within the specific implanted device details. So just click again for me. Yep, and you can see that we've got the area that's highlighted. Yes, sorry, there's conversations going on and I'm watching those as well. But before we move on, has anyone got any questions that they'd like to raise to the group? Or I can keep progressing and I can go through the definitions.
I think keep going. I think there's a bit of chat in the chat, but people are answering and we can move to the next. Yeah.
Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, so for that middle section, what we're suggesting is updating the existing implant medical device summary. So that one that's already published from AUE Request DI, and adding in device name, which is the name of the implanted medical device, the status, so an assertion about whether the identified device is currently in situ, the insertion date, the recorded date it was implanted, the implant body site as we went through previously, the removal date, a recorded date, time the device was replaced, and additional narrative about the identified implanted medical device in the comments section. And then next slide, please. And we also then need to propose this data group, which is the medical device, which is sitting nested within the implant medical device summary. So to give the context around the medical device, we wanted to include the descriptions of the data group itself. So you've got the proposal, the medical device on the left-hand side, and the medical device roadmap. So you can see we can expand on the right-hand side all of those particular details like manufacturer or serial number or model number of the device. We can capture all of that information if we need to. We can grow this particular model. So the concept description is that of the medical device itself is an instrument, apparatus, implant, material or similar used in the provision of healthcare. And the purpose is to record the details of that medical device in the provision of healthcare, and the representation would be record one instance per medical device. And it's usually, as we said before, nested within the standalone, within other standalone data groups to record the device details in a consistent way. So for device name, we've got the coding where with terminology is desirable where possible, but it might be something in particular like a cochlear implant, the Nucleus 7 sound processor, or it could be the Eversense E3 for a continuous glucose monitor machine, or for an intracardiac pacemaker, we've got the Medtronic Micro AV. Those are sort of examples that we can use there. And then we're also proposing to add the unique device identifier, the UDI, which is that alphanumeric string that's associated with this device or a given system. Yes, Oliver.
Thank you. You see in the chat, I've been asking some questions and I'm probably just very ignorant, but in the concept description, there's nothing there to say these are somehow below the skin, internal to the body. It just says it's any instrument apparatus. So used in the provision of healthcare, that could be a home blood pressure machine, but that's not really implanted.
Yes.
So does the definition need something more in there?
So remember that this particular data group is about the medical device itself. If we go back a slide to the ecosystem one, if you keep going, one more. I think it's, yep. Okay, so see how we've got the specific implanted device details. So we can actually get the insertion date and the implant body site. So we've got a body site data element sitting nested within the middle of the screen just there. I don't know if that's large enough for you to see. Do we need to zoom in a little bit?
Yeah, so that's not, what's the word, a definition as such. It's just assuming it. It's just a blob that says implanted device details and without saying what implant really means. Is it something that's not visible at all? Is it something that's partly inside and outside and other people could see it and know it's there? Like, what is the purpose of this? Is it to alert?
The medical device model itself is non-specific to implant, whether it's implanted or not. So that model could be used for any device. So like you said in the questions, you could put gadgets you put outside the skin, sitting on the body, things they use. Yep. It could be any sort of device that, any sort of device that's used. But the medical device summary itself, that has a definition. So the model on the left, which is specific to implanted, that one has a definition of a single implanted medical device or category of implanted device. So that does have the definition of. So when you use the medical device model with the implanted medical device, then it would need to be implanted. But you could use the medical device model to describe other things and could be used in other situations, like in the procedure, and you wanted to talk about devices that you used within a procedure.
I will say from coming from a Queensland Health context in my previous life, around the use of the implant history in the electronic medical record there, often how the implanted medical device or implant history is used can be defined on the care setting. So in some instances, it's important that, the local policy will determine that you would record a continuous glucose monitor as an implanted medical device. In other settings, it's not prioritised. But I think that comes down to implementation and local policy around some of the detail of that. So I think this model is able to support both, like those different implementation requirements.
And
sense, Oliver?
Yeah. If you keep going down a few more slides, there's actually a definition for Oliver, which is probably what he might be looking for. Oh, back one. Yep. Keep going back one. Yep. Okay, so can you see halfway down the screen that there's the implant body site, the anatomical location or body structure where the device is implanted, including laterality. So we actually do, by extending the summary, implanted medical device summary, which is just the summary about a device, is a device in situ or not, then we start to get a little bit more detail, a bit more granular about where it's located, when it was put in, is it in or not, and when it was removed or needed revision, and if we want to add in any other information. But the device itself, as you said, yes, it can be a device that's outside the body completely. So we would use that completely separately.
All right. To me, it's still a little unclear, but it'll do, and hopefully it'll all work out. Yep.
Okay. Maybe in the next slide we can see how it all comes together. So what we're looking at on the left-hand side with the orange background is the already published data elements that form part of that implant medical device summary from AU eRequest DI. And then nested within that specific implant device details, we're looking to expand this data group to include device name, status, insertion date, implant body site, and removal date and comment. And then within the specific device details, we want to include the device name and the unique device identifier. So it would form part of all of the implanted medical device summary data group, if that makes sense. So this is an update that we're proposing. Yep, sorry, Kylene.
I was just going to ask, were there any questions? Is it making sense? It is a little bit more of a complication because we are adding two groups together to create that ecosystem. But what we are doing is starting to get that idea. We've now got a medical device model. We can then reuse that in other places as well. So we can use it when we're describing procedures. We can use it to describe other things where there's a device involved, and there's that slot to then go, well, here are the device specific information that's there. And then you could actually create a device list, that kind of thing. Adrian.
So 2 questions. Firstly, the question around expiry dates. There's many devices which require to be removed after a certain period of time because they reach their expiry date. It's important that happens. And that's very important for us as clinicians because we need to know when the device needs to come out as well as when it gets put in. So I just wonder if expiry date should be included in that second one, the unique under date of expiry in that medical device roadmap. And the second question was around the body site. So there's, as you say, there's quite a lot of medical devices that will be coming, and we don't know what all of those are yet. Some of them will be subcutaneous, some of them will be intrauterine. There's a whole lot of different devices that could be inserted. So will the coding cover all of those sort of body sites? Because there's quite a few variations of that. So it could be an arm, but it could be subcutaneous, it could be within the bone. There's a whole lot of different devices that might exist.
I think there's quite extensive terminology to kind of cover a lot of the body sites. And I'm just thinking now from what you're saying, because I'm thinking of medications, which is not quite the same in terms of like the route of administration, but in this case, I think it's slightly different because it is whether it's in the bone or whether it's under the skin or whether, and I think we can go back and review the terminology to support that. But there is quite a lot of terminology that is currently available, but we'll have a review and then probably come back to the group, or it would be, we can come back to the group to see where that lands. In terms of the expiry date,
keep going. Yes, if you keep going, I just found it's in the medical.
Yeah, it's in the medical
device roadmap. Yep.
Yeah, I found it.
Sorry, Heather. Yes. Yep.
So in terms of, so you're proposing that it be included in this first step, like this first release, it's important to have expiry date. I think one of the reasons we didn't look at it is because you can get that information off once with the UDI, then I think if you've got the UDI, you can go to the TGA, I believe, and get the expiry date. But I could be wrong because we don't have anyone from the TGA here. But I think there was kind of
in the practical sense, I'm not going to contact the
TGA.
The TGA to get a device number, and if the TGA gets swamped with people asking when's the expiry date of this particular device, that's not really going to work. It's much better to have it information when you put it in, because when you put it in, you know when it's supposed to come out.
Yeah, I think in the future they're going to have API access, and it can open in the world of a whole bunch of kind of clinical decision support that way. But I totally appreciate that, particularly in maybe general practice, it's really important to have expiry date. So why don't is there anyone else on the call who thinks who also agrees with expiry date being needed? Like, I think we need it definitely at some point in time, but do we want it for this release? If there's any strong feelings there. I've got a couple of thumbs up, Oliver and Angela. Okay, well, do we want to do a vote on this whole model plus expiry date? So all of the things that Nai has spoken about, so adding on the additional things around the specific implanted device details, so the name, the status, insertion date, implant body site, the removal date, and a comment. So that will tick off most of the requirements. And then for the medical device to have device name, the UDI, and an expiry date. So if you can let me know Does that make sense?
I was just raising the question about expiry date's great. It may be that something doesn't technically expire, but should be exchanged within X number of weeks. Will that count as expiry date? Is it inclusive?
Date needs changing.
And to ask Angela's question, it's actually a review date in the implanted medical device cluster, which we can look at. I can go back to that if you need to see that.
Are we including the expiry date or not in the vote? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Plus expiry date. So this plus expiry date, that's what we're
Yes.
voting on.
Yep.
If you don't want expiry date, pick the minor changes and tell me that you don't want expiry date, please.
So it's date of expiry that appears under the medical device itself. That
Yeah, so it would be this one
yes,
here. So under
that's
medical
right.
device, we've got device
Yep.
name, UDI, and date of expiry.
Sorry, can you bring up the QR code again? Because my internet
Okay.
isn't seeing.
Yeah. There you go. Thanks for your comments in the chat. I think Tor, Heather, everyone's been answering, but we'll also go back through them and just make sure that we cover off anything if we've missed anything. So feel free to spam the chat. Happy to read it. Is there anyone else voting? Okay, I'll give it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Let's fix that.
Okay, so lastly, as you can see on the screen, we're going to continue and circle back to the child health record. And we, in particular, I think there was a bit of a conversation. This is not part of the backlog, but this is part of where AUCDI R3 is being proposed to include these particular data groups. And one of them in particular is to support that child health record, as I mentioned before. And this is to
be child health assessment. So,
child health assessment.
Looking at health assessments, and this is sort of in the scoping exercise that we did. Child health was a really big kind of call out.
Yeah.
To kind of support the child health assessment information that's currently being used in practice.
Okay. And if you just click the slide, we're proposing the data group. So the proposals on the left-hand side. So this would be the developmental milestone summary. So that would be a data group that contains summary information about the achievement of a developmental milestone for an individual, usually a child, to monitor progress over time. So the purpose is that summary information about the achievement of developmental milestone for an individual, again, usually a child, to monitor progress over time. And the representation would be to record one instance of that data group within a health record, and any changes or updates over time are captured as revisions to the original entry rather than creating a new entry. So if I step through, I know we've only got 10 minutes or a couple of minutes left, but I just want to step through the data group itself. So at the top, we've got an overall description, and that's where we could put in a description about the milestone. And then per milestone, there's that group of the data group in the middle that has the milestone name, the status, the date achieved, the date of assertion, so the date that the clinical assertion was that the milestone was reached or not, and a comment, and also when it was last updated. Now, this particular data group has the potential to expand over time, and we've put in the future candidates on the right-hand side in the roadmap, and those would include overall status, overall trajectory, and a whole lot that help us describe the actual milestone itself, as well as allowing us to provide some additional details. There's a slot at the bottom and an additional comment. So if we click to the next slide, we scanned a lot of different developmental milestone sources. And as you can see on the screen, we've got some some from like the 3-year-old check from the New South Wales LHD. We've got part of the 715 where those red flags are highlighted. Then these may or may not be familiar, but you can see that there's a lot of different variations in the way that milestones are observed and recorded. So we needed something that was going to be broad enough to be able to capture a description about the milestone that was achieved or not, and provide the information to support continuity of care over time. So if you go to the next screen, Eileen, we've got the descriptions now. So again, the data group, the clinical concepts highlighted in that orange box on the left, and on the right, we've got a description of of how this particular data group would be used, and includes the data elements with overall description. So again, that's where that narrative summary about the individual's overall progress in achieving developmental milestones. So that's the overall description. And then per milestone, we're able to capture those milestones on that previous slide in a little bit more detail. So the name of the milestone, the status, a statement about describing the current level of achievement for that identified milestone. And if you look on the model, we're proposing achieved, reported to be achieved, or reported as achieved. So that might come from a parent or a carer, for example, and also not achieved. And then there's the date achieved, so the date when the milestone was reached, the date of assertion, because that might be different to when it was achieved. So the date when the milestone was assessed, and then the comment. So additional narrative about the individual's developmental progress related to the identified milestone, which is not captured in other fields. And then at the bottom, we've got the last updated, so the date when the developmental milestone record was last updated. So I'm wondering if there's any sort of comments that we might like to or feedback about this particular model. Again, some other examples of the milestones that we could be recording or thinking about would include things like smiling or eye focus. We've got those, and Kim, you can maybe jump in if you've got some additional ones that you want to flag here. But some of social emotional sort of behavioural milestones, and those physical gross motor or fine motor milestones, like rolling over or crawling.
I'm curious to know what others who are not paediatricians think before I, carry on, but I'm very excited. Development's really hard because and Nairi and Heather know how difficult it has been for me to think about development in a really, really like pixelated way. But this is really just choosing a milestone. There are milestones that happen within domains of development, social, behavioural, gross motor, there's the development of your teeth, all those sorts that there's a trajectory that each one of those will follow. But I've had to just get really focused on choosing a milestone and how do I want to report that. And this data model, I think, works really well for an individual milestone that you might be considering. Milestones are not concrete steps, but yes, which is why this is a revised. I think this is right. This is why it's not updated. It's revised. Is that there's a difference? How did you say it, Nairi?
Yeah, so we record one instance of this data group within a health record, and then any changes or updates over time are captured as revisions to the original entry. So rather than creating a new entry, you're sort of getting that progression over time, and you can see it evolving over time. But you might want to capture more than one milestone. So you can see underneath the per milestone, there's a little 0 with a star, which means, if we can zoom in, that'd be great. It means that we can have as many different milestones there as we like, but we can record, we must record the milestone name under that with that little cardinality, which means one to one, which is mandatory. So
I think I really like the model because I think just looking at some of these other ones, you can see the way that we record information around milestones. It's both in the positive and the negative, and it's important to understand that. So we needed a way to make sure that the model is able to kind of support that. And I think in, whether it's a red flag or when to seek advice kind of thing, or it is to say, yes, they have achieved this. And I think this is a really good kind of first step. And I think Charlotte's question around why we start with SARM and then move forward, I think part of it is making sure that we get that basic framework, a really solid starting point, a foundation that we won't need to go back on, because we need to make sure that this is meeting the purpose and we're not adding in things unnecessarily that we'll need to undo later because we haven't put enough thought into it. So it is a step-by-step approach, starting with what we're sure of, what makes a good first step, what is a good start, a good base for us to build upon, and then slowly add additional ones as we understand our use cases better, as we mature everything a little bit further. Were there any other questions or comments around the developmental milestones?
I'm not sure if I've answered Charlotte's question about why we're approving certain data elements now, but I think it is to create that basic framework within each one. There isn't an agreed set of things that a child must do at 12. It all depends. It's that really annoying response that you get from doctors. Well, it depends, it's like, well, I wouldn't expect you to be able to walk if you've had hip dysplasia, for instance, right? I wouldn't expect you to crawl normally, but you're doing what I would expect you to do with that condition. Therefore, I'm not going to say your development's at that point in time delayed. It's just on pause for a bit. I think I'm explaining that correctly.
Yeah, and I think that kind of says why at this point in time we're not including something like an overall status, because I think some more information, we need to really understand what does that mean to say that. So if we start with just understanding what the milestones were that you are, as whatever clinicians, using whatever tooling that you've got to go, well, they've reached this particular milestone at a particular point in time with maybe some comments, that would be a good first step to then have it go to someone like Kim, who's able to actually assess it with all of the other information that's in front of them, and to perhaps in the future, let's think about what the status might mean. But I think we need a little bit more thought on that. And I think this is a step forward. Yes. And then Heather's got some other comments in there around deviations and things like that. So I'm curious to see what people think on this one. So if we've only got a couple of minutes, so I'd like to do a little vote on this one, please, just to see where people are at with this. I'll put the QR code again up for Adrian if his thing's not, if I can. For some reason it's not liking my, oh, there it is. There's the QR code for you, Adrian, if you need it. If you have any other thoughts or comments on the matter, happy to hear about it or pop it in the chat or reach out. I think Kim's keen to, collaborate with everyone who's really interested.
Yes. So yes.
I think this is a very cool first step for this stuff. Because I think it makes it's nice and complementary, because we've started to get the growth chart things in there. We've got height, weight, now we'll have head circumference. So we're starting to collect up these bit by bit things that could then feed into all of that health, child health information that's really important. So it's I think it's a big first step. So I'm really excited to have it in there.
I'm super excited.
Yeah.
Super, super excited. I was just talking to my dad last night about it. He's in his 70s, and he's like, "Did I still use the baby book?" And I'm like, "Yes, Dad. That's all we have. Paper."
And it's still paper.
Paper.
And there's one in every state, and it's its own colour, and it's special.
But imagine if we could start building it somewhere else, and we had a way of just recording them to begin with. I don't care what order it's in. I can put it in an order. But yes, we need to
get the bits of the data. Yeah.
Yeah, we just need to throw everybody in the room together, right, on the other side of this data group, and decide what the roadmap
what it looks
needs
like.
to be.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, it looks like we're not getting any more votes, so I think we'll close it there. So I think that's the end of the so just got last couple of minutes. So just to remind everyone, we'll have another CDG in October. We'll talk about functional status, and we might bring some things back, some of the discussions that we've had if we need to do that. Our next face-to-face is in Canberra on the 12th of November. The tickets are available now on Eventbrite, so that QR code will get you there. We will be talking about, most of the day will be around encounter record and thinking about what an MVP could look like. What does that mean? How can it relate to patient summary? All of those things. And then we will use a small part of that meeting to also just revisit the things that we did at the last one and just kind of provide an update and show you where we're at with that. So that's in Canberra on the 12th. Flights at the moment are getting quite expensive. So if you are planning to go, please sort your transport and accommodation now. I think there's a few things going on that week in Canberra. I mean, it is a standards week, so obviously that's why it's really, really popular, but apparently there's other things going on. So please, if you're keen, get in early. And yes, just one day for this one, Kim, just the Wednesday, I think it is.
Yeah, but there is a TDG on the Thursday.
Yeah, there is a TDG on the Thursday. I'm not sure. I think they're going through some of the patient summary stuff. You can find out what their agenda is on that same Eventbrite. You can have a look there, but I can't remember the rest of it. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? No? And Maddie's popped the link in there. So I think that's all I had. So thank you everyone for your time. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you at the next meeting. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.